All right, how'd you get into hardcore?
2002, Hate Breed CD Satisfaction. At the mall, hanging out with this girl who had a kidney shut on.
Oh, for real?
For real!
Well, what keeps you in the scene?
Man, the brotherhood, the family, how it's like a unity, and how people... Start over, man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We can edit it out.
We can edit it out. Just so. Yeah. So what got you into the hardcore? Who now? What keeps you in the hardcore scene?
I guess friends, man. Just like I can go to the show and feel comfortable and not feel alone, instead of going out somewhere public and people looking at you like, man, what the fuck? What's on his shirt? Blah blah blah. It's just I feel accepted. It's like I have another family.
What keeps you in straight? What made you want to become straight edge? Was it a certain band that influenced you to become straight edge, or?
Nah, I'm just gonna say I hate Minor Threat, but I guess I had a friend and he was straight edge. He got me into like punk and was like, man, you need to back away from metal. And he tried to get me to listen to like bands like Minor Threat, Project X, and all that. So I was like, cool, man. So I claimed straight edge or whatever. And at the time, I was like, yeah, I'm straight edge, I'm cool. Then later on, I was like, well, I made a commitment. I'm going to take it seriously. And, I've been like straight edge 7 years. People back then was telling me, like, man, you're just a kid. When you get about 20, you won't be standing here still. Well, I'm 20, I'm still here. Look back at them, they're selling drugs, I'm doing other shit. So, it's jokes on them.
What are some of the bands that influence you to this day?
Man, that's a difficult question to answer because like I'm not into traditional hardcore like a lot. Like I'm more on metal-based hardcore. But if I had to say, Floor Punch was probably one of my favorite bands. That I ever got into. That was like traditional hardcore. Tough guy shit. So I probably have to say Floor Punch is my favorite band, traditional wise.
How do you feel about the current state of the Louisville hardcore scene?
Man, there isn't even a hardcore scene. It's all, a bunch of metalheads, think they're hardcore, but they don't know anything about it or whatever. It's just the scene died like I don't even know, like Unbound was probably the last hardcore band we had. After they broke up, it died pretty much. People quit going to shows, and they just didn't think it was cool anymore. So yeah.
What do you think was the result of that? What do you think brought Louisville down to what it is now? Do you think it was the kids? Do you think it was the scene, the bands?
Yeah, I think it was mainly the kids because used to people come out to shows, at least 100. It could be a local show, and people would just come out, and then they just stopped giving a fuck. I guess they got tired of it or whatever, or they just wanted to move on. People were like, man, I got to get a job or whatever. Well, that's cool and all, what I'm saying? But don't, like talk about something and keep adding it on like it's a shit and all that, and then you just fucking diss it. It's like being a hypocrite or whatever. It's stupid.
How do you feel about kids that claim to be more hardcore, like hardcore's in a hierarchy, like because they have a certain band on a record you never heard of before? Does that make you better than you?
Man, they can think whatever they want. I don't put myself better than anyone because everybody goes through struggles. Nobody's better than anybody. I don't believe in God or whatever, but like, people that that are Christians think they're better than me just because they have a person they can look up to, and I don't know. I'm not one of those people who thinks I'm better than you. I don't have that kind of attitude. I might be better than you in a video game, you know what I'm saying? But I just don't have that attitude towards being a person being better than you.
Tell me about your band, Hard Life.
Woo! Well, Hard Life. Well, just a bunch of dudes who was like, let's start a band, do something different. Thought we could probably, change things. People start coming out, but it really didn't do anything. But we started a bunch of drama and shows all the time, and people was fighting. We were just like, well, we don't have blast beats or anything, so nobody really digged us. So, Louisville's just a metal scene now.
What kind of legacy do you think Hard Life's going to leave behind in the future?
None whatsoever. Nobody gives a shit about Hard Life. I don't give a shit about Hard Life.
Do you think kids don't give a shit about Hard Life or just hardcore?
Both. I don't think anybody's in it for the message anymore. I think, they see all these big bands like Terror and shit, and they're like, oh man, we start a band like this, we can get blown up and blah blah blah. They're not doing it for the kids, they're just doing it for themselves. Like, that's how it is with promoters, they book all these bands that they like. 20 kids show up, they complain about it. Oh man, we only had 20 kids show up at my show. Well man, maybe you shouldn't book a band that you like and nobody else likes. I'd book a band that, everybody talks about or whatever. I might not like them, but I know the kids will come out and hang out, and be like, yeah, it'd be like a unity. Again, like how Louisville used to be.
What do you think could bring Louisville back to what it used to be when you first got into the scene?
Man, it's a hard question because, I'm not from Louisville, but, the shit I've heard back in the day, how it was, the shit, I've seen videos of, Endpoint and shit. I think it was just, the people who came out brought other people. And it was all friends, nobody hated each other, no drama, no beef like how it is now. I think MySpace has ruined everything pretty much. You want to, the internet is just fucking taking over. It's all about, nobody gives a shit about hardcore anymore.
If you can do anything to change the scene or improve the scene, what would you do?
I try to put a message out, I guess, to the kids, like signs or whatever, but they tried that. Della Collins is a big influence on my part. I met her at Alexa's show. She was telling me about how Louisville hardcore, this and that. I started going to Louisville and seeing I met people now. There's a couple of kids that come out still, but they're not in it for the same reason anymore. They're just coming out to have fun, which is cool. But nobody just gives a shit anymore. It's just this thing that people blew off. But there are people, in Louisville that do give a shit about hardcore. They just don't come out anymore because they either have wife and kids or jobs or whatever. So,
any last words?
Be you, be yourself. Don't look up to somebody and be like, I want to be like them, because that just doesn't work. Trust me. I've tried that. I want to be like plenty of people. The best thing to do is be yourself. That's all I got to say. One life smooth, West Side for life. Kiss my black ass, Oprah.